So welcome everyone, thank you very much for coming. I was going to say, for those that don't know me, I mean, it's four of us, you all know me by now. Even Ms. McKay, who just met me tonight, knows me now. Manager of Economic Development here for the city, thank you very much for coming. This is part of a process that we're going through for our community improvement plan. I'll walk through the steps of what we're going to do and why we're doing it as we go through it. But I'm going to start off, and just for those that may be watching at home or watching this video in the future, we're going to touch on what a CIP is. So a community improvement plan essentially is to allow municipal incentives to stimulate private sector investment in the community. It provides a framework for achieving community improvements to rehabilitate and revitalize project areas and to finance private sector projects through different programs, including municipal budgeting, fee rebates, or grants. Essentially, in a nutshell, the Municipal Act limits us from municipal bonusing. We cannot bonus a business for coming or starting up or doing anything else. It's contrary to the Municipal Act. The CIP allows us in advance, and it becomes a document that gets approved by the ministry that allows us to outline a set of predetermined incentives and legitimate incentives for business and private enterprise to invest in a community. So it doesn't become later on, well, we gave business X this, and honest, that was on our CIP all along. It's a document, it's received by council, it's approved by the ministry, and we go through. So again, the bottom line, it's a way for us to incentivize business and private enterprise to entice them to come to the community, to grow within the community, and existing businesses. It's not just to bring new business into the community, it's also for promoting and helping our existing businesses grow. The process through this has been a fun one for me because it's my first time going through it. The last one was put through and adopted in 2016. So the process has been really morphing from the 2016 CIP. We didn't start from scratch because that would have been really, really expensive. So we've been working with our partners at J.L. Richards to prepare this updated version of a CIP. A great thing about working with a partner like that is that they work with multiple municipalities. So the R&D, rob and duplicate from other municipalities, we've been able to lean on our partners and say, what's been working in other communities since 2016? And we've gotten some great feedback from them. Sarah and Nikita, our colleagues through J.L. Richards, have been fantastic. So the process started with a review of the existing one. So this has been going on, I want to say, since August or September of last year. So it was a review of what's been going on, seeing what's out in the market, see what's been changing. We've gone through multiple drafts to get to where we are now with the draft that we have. This next step is to share with the community what we've got in the CIP, get feedback from the community of what we may have missed, what they'd like to see different, what in here doesn't ring a bell for them or excite them, and certainly take into account suggestions from the community. We even got one, someone reached out before the event and gave me one. The next step is we go back, we take the suggestions from the community, take that into account, massage the draft from there. That then goes to the Economic Development Standing Committee, who will do a review of the draft. Once we get to a point where we're comfortable and we feel we've got our final document, that goes to the ministry for adoption, and then from the ministry it comes back to council for approval, and we can start doing CIP applications. In the interim, the important thing for anyone listening or anyone that asks, the current CIP is still in place. So the current community improvement plan that we have right now is not on hold, it's not on hiatus, it hasn't gone away, it's still there, folks can still apply. So the CIP area, we've changed it a little bit. So you'll notice as we go through, one of the things that were really important to the team as we started talking to, and I have to say Ms. Bray was very instrumental in this as well, was looking at the traditional CIP that we had was very what we'd consider business focused. It was for businesses in the downtown core and the industrial areas. We realized that a big part of private enterprise that we want to stimulate in our economy is residential development. So we took the old CIP where it had pockets of the commercial areas in town, and as you can see now from the slide, the CIP area is now been expanded to all of the zoned areas in the municipality. So ultimately, the CIP now is for all businesses, not just retail and commercial businesses. So we've got two real program streams. There is a commercial expansion grant and a tourism activation grant. So we've got two streams for that side. I'll start with the tourism activation grant. That one, it's to encourage investment in tourism operations. So some of the eligible costs that are part of that, folks that are doing accommodations, recreational experience development, public restrooms, digital adaptation, and event infrastructure. So that's something that we picked up from our colleagues, especially our colleagues at Destination Northern Ontario. One of their big pushes is public restrooms and public restrooms along public corridors. So we all take for granted that it's the bush, and people go camping and do that. But a lot of people that are traveling through a community, especially after hours when retail is closed, we're very fortunate we have a 24-hour fuel station here in town. But traveling through town to have that access to use a restroom, so that's one of the enticements in there. But of course, digital adaptation. We want to have our tourism operators who have maybe not advanced into the digital age as quickly as they could have something there. So there's a tourism component to it, and as you'll find with the majority, if I think all of our CIP incentives, they all are percentage based. So there's no real part of our CIP, with the exception of the tax increment grant portion of it, that the city funds all of it. So we're making sure that there is some investment from the business, that, to use the term, they'll have some skin in the game. So it's not just knocking in, we want to make sure they have some investment. The commercial expansion grant, that's to assist with the expansion of existing commercial and industrial uses. So this was a very interesting one. We had some businesses that are on the edge of looking to expand their footprint, add a couple of square feet out the back, add a front patio area, and there's a lot of things they can do. This was to increase and entice the businesses to add onto their business. There's one business in town that I was speaking to, which came up when we were talking about this, that a lot of their storage area cuts into their retail floor space. So the idea was expanding their building out the back a little bit, which would then in turn be their storage space, and they could make their retail floor space bigger. So that's one of the ideas when this one came through. And before I flip to the next slide, there's only 4 of us in here. So if you have any questions, ask as we go along, and I'll answer as we go. Talking about multi-residential programs, a big part of the future for Elliot Lake and part of our economic plan for economic development has always been to, and part of our mandate has always been to attract multi-residential and more housing in the community. So multi-residential programs, so we started this with a baseline, and I'll touch on why I'm saying that after I finish the slide, but we started with the baseline. So the idea was, again, business focused. So we started with low density residential. So to apply for these grants, you had to be building, starting, working, going through 3 dwelling units, whether that is 3 detached homes, semi-detached dwellings, row houses, and townhouses. So if you're doing a single family home and a semi-detached, there's your 3 properties. If you're doing a townhouse with 3 units, there's your 3 properties. We wanted to make it so it was a combination thereof to get to the 3. So the new multi-unit residential dwelling grant. So again, this is to encourage multi-unit residential housing development, to increase the number of new dwellings in the city. So development of new dwellings, $1,000 per dwelling, up to a maximum of 20 units or $20,000. So if you're going to come and build 20 houses in Elliot Lake, $1,000 a house, $20,000. Very simple math going that way. If you're coming in and you're building a row of townhouses and you're doing a row of 4 townhomes, $1,000 per townhome. Grant is $4,000. So I'm not the sharpest sponge in the drawer, so I had to make the math nice and easy for me to work with our applicants. The renovation grant is to stimulate investment in the existing housing stock in multi-unit and residential apartment buildings. We had the eligible costs of renovation and upgrades to existing dwelling units of $500, bless you, $500 per unit to a maximum of $10,000. So if there's a unit that is older and it's not very marketable because the unit is tired or it may not even be in use at the moment, the idea for this was to go to have some incentive for the property owner. And again, same minimum, which is 3 dwelling units. I said I'd touch on a comment that I received beforehand. I did have someone reach out, Mr. Shaughnessy reached out to us earlier on as this was going through, and his input was, and we'll discuss this here, and we can discuss it, and we'll certainly discuss it with committee as we go through. His recommendation was not to have a minimum. It should be if Steve has a home and I wanted to add another dwelling unit to my home as a basement unit or apartment, that should be part of the incentive program. It was something we discussed when we were going through the process. When we went through it and with our colleagues, the idea was very much to have it be very business focused. If Steve, as private landowner, decided to renovate my basement floor to make another apartment, that really wasn't tied to a business per se. It was just me making another unit in my home. So again, happy to get input from you folks as we go through, and again, we'll get input from the committee. So that was the thought process behind this, and the details we received from our colleagues was, this is the point of doing this, is to try and encourage multi-unit residential. So before I slip to the next slide, any questions? Oh, yes ma'am.
If a private homeowner builds a basement apartment or a unit above his garage or whatever, does the tax base for that dwelling increase?
Yes, so I'm going to repeat your question because not everyone's going to pick it up on the mic. So the question was, if a private landowner adds a unit or finishes their basement, does their tax, does the tax levy increase, or does the taxation for that unit increase? Theoretically, yes. When you put in for a building permit, and if adding a basement apartment and finishing it and finishing your basement takes the value of your home from X to Y, your property value goes up and your MPAC assessment is based on your property value. So theoretically, yes, it would. The question is, again, twofold. One is, how many people are going to do that to take advantage of this grant? And we'll touch on later that we're going to have a cap on the amount per year that the CIP will have available. Does incentivizing John Smith from adding a basement apartment or a unit above or second floor, or whatever it may be, or upgrading, will that add to the taxation to the same level as someone who builds 3 new homes or renovates an apartment building? Will that incremental change happen? And that's why we stuck with 3. The 3 was small enough that it was attainable, but big enough that someone builds 3 units, that's going to have a marked increase in taxation for the community.
What is the source of the CIP funding?
The CIP funding, historically it had money put into it as a reserve. So it's sitting, if I'm not mistaken, at 146,000-ish right now. So through the budget process, there was monies allocated to the CIP reserve. I'll be very honest, our CIP has been so underutilized for years, and from a number of factors. I'm not going to put blame on one side or another, but it's been so underutilized that the amount sitting in it right now, we didn't take it to budget this year because there's already a fund in there. So the idea is that people will use up to $50,000 every year, but folks haven't been using it. So we didn't go back. So at the number of 50,000, not to ruin the surprise for later, but 50,000 is the number that we're talking about for the annual maximum. Theoretically, the Economic Development Department has 3 years worth of that in there. So we wouldn't look at revisiting adding more to the budget for another 3 budget cycles because we don't need to.
There's no provincial money at all in there?
No, this is a CIP is solely municipal.
They're not putting in anything at all here?
No, this is solely what we do to entice, but this doesn't stop property owner A, who's going to build an apartment building to get $1,000 from us per unit, and then going to FedNor, the NOHFC, CMHC. It doesn't stop them from.
So this wouldn't hurt them?
No, most of those funds are stackable. So they're and same with us. We're not having them declare if they're getting other sources of funding to go towards it. It's part of it, and from other grants, typically these would all be stackable, and that's the intent. It's that every level of government would try and chip in to move this along.
Even the federal government's getting into it now.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
So is staff have discretion if you're gonna cap it, maybe this discussion should be later, I don't know, but if you're capping it, say at $50,000 and you have someone that's going to come in and build a 40-unit apartment building, do you have the discretion to not give the money to all one developer, or to give the money to all one developer? Is that something that staff has the discretion to do, so it's not going into one pocket and others are going to do with it?
Yep. So the question was, do the staff have the discretion on how to split up the funds or offer the funds to one or another? So as it's set up, the staff approval level for the CIP, and we'll touch on this later, but it's $7,500 per. So that's what we can, myself and the CAO have the ability collectively to authorize for a CIP application. Anything over $7,500 goes to council. In the final one, it's the most boring 38 pages you'll read of conditions at the back, but it's all there. There is a statement that allows that if an opportunity above the $50,000 happens, that we can approach council, and council can make a decision or a call to go over and above the $50,000 allocation, or transfer from to the fund from another reserve or that side. The Economic Development Department also has a reserve that we work on for projects, so nothing to say if someone came in and that there was a great opportunity, that it wouldn't be transferred from that. The other important thing about the CIP, touching on that, is that and everyone's okay with me using the acronym CIP, so I don't have to say Community Improvement Plan over and over and over again. One of the things about the CIP is the monies are not paid out until the work is completed. So we're never going to be caught flat-footed, so to speak. So if someone comes in and we'd allocated our $50,000 for that year, a project of that size typically were 18, 24, 36 months before they'd submit their invoices to say, yes, the work is done, give me my money. So before we get to that point, we've got the ability to plan. So it's not urgent enough that we wouldn't have the foresight to know what was going to happen. And in turn, as Mr. Caverly said, that we wouldn't include it in the budget process. If we're getting close and we've only got $50,000 left in the CIP, but we know that, I keep using John Smith. John Smith has a lot of money. So John Smith comes in and says, I'm going to build an apartment building, and in 36 months, I'm applied for the CIP. I'm going to ask for another $50,000. The council wouldn't include that as part of budgeting to go towards that.
Question. If say somebody come in and wants to build, like you're saying, 50 units, townhouse or whatever, well, chances are that'd be a townhouse technically, but can they go after it multiple years?
No, so
20 this year, 20 next year, 20 the year after.
no. So the question was, can you stack it multiple years? No. The application process is per project, so it's a one and done. We did make in this version something that we corrected over the last. You can reapply. The same property owner, the same business person can apply if they're doing something new, and it wasn't in the previous CIP. So, Kevin, to answer your question, if they're doing this one and they've built the site. So again, we're back to individual sites. Not to say that a business person or a property owner can't buy more properties and apply in the future. So if they build on Axsmith and then they're building a new project 5 years from now somewhere else, they can apply because it's a different project. But for the same project, so for example, multi-unit residential, they applied, they did it, they didn't apply for the sign grant, but everything's done on that job. If the next CIP comes through and we have a special, we've added on a CIP portion for a different type of signage or something, or to add a playground, I'm just picking something, they can then apply because it wasn't in this one. So we've made it so we haven't precluded them from applying if they choose to upgrade in the future for items outside of this CIP. Good? All right. So we've got some universal programs, and the universal programs for both residential and commercial development. Application permit fees, this was in the old one. So planning application fees, 75% reduction, except for legal costs, up to a maximum of $1,500. Building permit fees, 100% reduction up to a maximum of $10,000. Signage permit fees, this is the 100% reduction to a maximum of $200, and the demolition permit fees, 100% reduction up to a maximum of $3,000. Feasibility and design grants, feasibility studies for redevelopment or adaptive reuse of vacant buildings or land. So there's a few items on there: soil analysis, ministry and environment evaluation, concept plans, market analysis, architectural drawings, engineering plans, or any other as determined, 50% up to $5,000. And the environmental site grant, they can promote this promotes the undertaking of environmental study, phase 1, phase 2, ESA, and remedial work plans and risk assessments, up to 50% up to $10,000. So again, remedial work plans, this is not for the remedial work itself. So this is just the planning process. Phase 1, phase 2, I've certainly lived through a few in the last little while. They're interesting and they're changing, and that's happening a lot with the repurposing of land. So if you had, as it was explained to me, if you had a lot and it was residential or it was a school, and for a hot 5 minutes you had a commercial tenant in there, to go back to residential, you've got to do a phase 1 all over again. And a lot of this was taxing to some investors. So this now gives, it's all about helping ease them into the project. It's not about doing the project for them or giving them enough money to make it, cash flow positive for them. It's enough to take some of the sting out of having to do an environmental assessment. Some other universal programs continuing on. So the planning and design grant, so again, to offset the costs associated with preparing necessary plans and drawings for works related to another CIP incentive. So the adding units, the rehabilitation of units, folks that are looking to do, and you'll see the accessibility one, so for doors and windows or facade grants, this helps pay for some of their plans and architectural work, 75% up to a maximum of $1,500. Structural and accessibility improvement grant, so to promote the undertaking of building accessibility improvements, accessible entrances, internal accessibility, 75% up to a maximum of $5,000. We have someone that's in the works right now that's adding a ramp to their facility, to their building, to the outside of their building, to increase accessibility, which is very important to them. They've applied under the old CIP, and we're going through that. So we're helping to pay for a portion of the cost of them installing a ramp for their building. And accessible entrances. I can tell you from experience, the cost of getting a door where you push that button and the door opens automatically, it is really, really expensive. So helping to do that helps a business owner, makes their business more attractive to those with accessibility challenges, but it also helps our community. It's a community, it's a positive step in our community to make every building accessible in Elliot Lake. The building facade improvement grant, this is to help folks with improving their building facades. So restoration of brick, exterior painting, modifications to the entranceway, changing lighting on the outside or some architectural details, 50% maximum up to $17,500. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I have a question. So if I'm looking at buying a piece of property and I haven't purchased it yet, but I know it's going to need a soil assessment before I can build on it, is this something the CIP will do, or do I have to own the property before I can apply?
For the environmental one, the way it's written in the CIP is you have to own the property. The feasibility and design study grant, that would be before, as it's written. And again, we're happy to take input, and we'll certainly take input from committee, but the idea was to not go through it and commit dollars to someone who's just picking 10 properties in town and doing environmental assessments. There has to be a reasoning for doing so.
But chances are, if the city owns the property, they may already have that assessment on hand for some of the properties.
The question is would the city have the environmentals for the properties if someone's going to purchase them? Not necessarily. And again, depending on what your, sorry, I'll get you in a second. I just got you in the corner. Depending on the usage. So the city necessarily would not get a phase 1 on a property if it was commercial, but if John Smith again comes in and says, I'm buying this property because I want to put up 5 townhomes. Well, that's a whole different step. That's the environmental. We wouldn't necessarily go through the process of getting a phase 1 on a piece of property that has been commercial if the intent is to resell it for commercial. The phase 1 ties into your, again, another acronym, RSC, record of site condition. So you get your phase 1 to get your record of site condition to then build residential. So that's where the environmental and be part of the process, and that's usually part of the due diligence of the property owner, especially if they're changing over. Yes, sir.
So on this applies to all of these. On the third box there, it says 50% up to a maximum of 10,000. So does that mean that the maximum that they can submit as a, let's say, invoice, whatever, to you is for 10,000 and they get 50% of that? Or can they submit up to 20,000 and get 50% of that is the 10,000?
It's up to 10,000. So they would apply for, so if their environmental assessment costs $20,000, they'd put in and they'd get $10,000. If their environmental assessment costs $10,000, they'd get 5. But as we go through, and I'll just say it now, I had it for the end. So every property has a maximum of $20,000 that they can get. So they can't stack all of these out and walk out with a check for $200,000 from the city of Elliot Lake. Your maximum per property is $20,000. So it's any combination thereof. So it's not a slot machine. We're not rolling the big wheel on the Price is Right and walking out with a big chunk of change. The idea is it's a maximum of $10,000, a combination of any or, tying up to $20,000. And I refuse to get bifocals, so I got to take my glasses off to read now. The total of all grants combined under all programs shall not exceed the eligible cost of the CIP with respect to those lands or buildings. Individual properties shall not exceed $20,000 with the exception of the tax increment grant and shall be in addition to any other grant. So the tax increment grant, we'll touch on that one. That is tax relief for the increase on the value of the building. That is over and above and aside from any of these grants that folks apply for. Good, perfect. Thought I lost my clicker. So we covered the building facade improvement grant was the last one. And again, there's a bit of a selfish one to that from the municipality. We'd like folks to take advantage of that one because if they make their buildings look nice and pretty, it makes the city look nice and pretty. So that one is an important one. Signage and awnings. So this is a great one, especially for a new business who's starting up. I'm very proud to say that there's 2 on Ontario Avenue that we did basically at the same time. JC's computer moved in, replaced his sign, has a new sign outside, and Dr. Dana Malash, who is just a little further down, Ontario, has applied for the grant as well, and her new sign was something that the city did under our CIP grant now. It's a great thing to have a new business person come in, and having started a business as well in the past, these are little things. Yes, it's only $2,000, but when you're starting a brand new small business, $2,000 is a lot of money, or could be a lot of money depending on what kind of business you're starting. So the signage and awnings grant applies to removal of damaged signs, erections of new permanent signage, lighting improvements. I can tell you some all the way across that I've worked with. So Hall's Custom Woodworking and Design, we helped Stephanie and Turner get theirs. I mentioned JC, Elliot Lake Meats and Deli, we did theirs. Our good friend Jack and Carla at Jack Ski and Bike Shack, we helped them get their sign when they moved in. So again, it's beautifying the outside of their building, but again, a simple thing that we can do to help them get started when they go out. Landscape and property improvement grants. This is fairly benign. It's for upgrading landscaping and parking areas. 50% up to a maximum of $5,000 for plant and materials, greenery, shrubs, and then 50% up to a maximum of $10,000 for paving. So if someone buys a property and their driveway is horrible and they're going to invest in repaving, the CIP would apply up to $10,000 for paving. The property tax increment grant, this is the one I was talking about. So this one is over and above all the other ones. This one does not count towards the $20,000 maximum that we had. So essentially, it's the tax increase in the property. So if someone buys a very old building or buys a lot with nothing on it, and the value of that dirt, their square, is $5,000, and it's the MPAC assessment is $5,000. They build a brand new building, they put the building on the lot. Now with the building on there, that property is assessed at $500,000. I'm picking numbers out of the air. So, and Mrs. Sonnenberg's going to kill me that I don't know all the tax numbers, but let's say the property tax on a vacant piece of property was $150. They've built a $500,000 building, and now the taxation for that property is $5,000 a year. So, no, I should have picked an easier number. Say $10,000 a year, because the number will be easier to do that way. So $10,000 a year in the first year, they would not pay the difference in that increase. So 100% of that tax would be relieved in the first year. In second year, it'd be 75, so they'd only pay $2,500. Third year, they'd pay $5,000. Fourth year, they'd pay $2,500, and in year 5, full tilt, they're paying the full amount. Now, I know that math doesn't work because I know they paid $150 in the first year, but cut me some slack, I don't have a calculator, so you understand where we're going. So that's a good way to take folks and ease some of their tax burden as well as they're going through it. Any questions before I go on to the next slide? I was hoping someone said yes, would give me a chance to take a swig of coffee. That's it for the incentive programs that are there. This is the important part. This is the CIP application process. And there's been some folks that have gone through, and it's been difficult. We have to respect the process. And folks have come in and said, well, I just built a building, I want to apply for this. Well, that's not how it works. So we've had to hold tight on some of these. So the CIP application process starts with an idea for a commercial, industrial, multi-residential property improvement. They contact us and they say, this is what I want to do. I'm going to take building X, I'm going to add 5 units. I'm going to take building X and I'm already in it and I want to put up a new sign. And I want to knock a back wall out and make some room for storage area. We discuss it. We review the CIP for eligibility. If they're eligible, if it's going to work out, we fill out an application form. That goes through and it goes to the committee for a decision. If the committee rejects it, revise and resubmit. So the nice thing about it is it's not the Superior Court. It's not a one and done. If there's a way to come back and look at it, we want to. One of the things that bothers me the most about our current CIP is, as much as I've talked to people about it, as much as we've done it, our uptake's not huge. And I get sometimes folks get into the minutia of starting a business or building something, and there's much other and bigger fish to fry than getting $2,000 from the city to help pay for a sign, and it falls by the wayside. I've had countless folks come to me after and say, okay, well, I heard about that CIP thing, I want to apply for it now. Because part of the process is quotes. So let's take the signage grant. So for each of the signage ones, we get a minimum of 2 quotes, preferably 3. For the facade work on the outside, we ask for multiple quotes. It's not, hey, I've already done the work, here's the 3 quotes I got, honest. I'm not saying anyone's doing it nefariously, but here's the 3 quotes I got. We have 0 input. I have had some where I've gone through and folks have said, here's my 2 quotes. And I said, well, as a municipality, we're suggesting reasonably, I mean, they're apples and apples, we suggest you take the cheaper one. Well, I prefer to deal with this company. As a business owner, that's your prerogative. You can deal with that company, but we can't provide the grant because it's not fair use of the municipality's dollars, especially if it's under the 50% threshold. Again, it's 50 cents on the dollar up to $2,000 for a sign. So if someone comes in and says, well, this sign is $4,000 and you get 50%, so $2,000, and this one is $3,000 and it's $1,500, it's not responsible to the municipality to say, well, you like sign guy B more than you like sign guy A, so yeah, we'll pay the extra $500 to go with who you like. Not to say that we always go with the lowest price. There are ones that we've done that have been higher, that are, through research, we know it is a better supplier. It's a local supplier. They've done other work. There's other variables that the group takes into account when we go through it. So if it's rejected, revise and resubmit, go back to the committee for a decision. If it's approved, you enter into an agreement with the city, complete the works according to the application and plans, and then when that's all complete, you submit and you receive funding. So it's a fairly simple process as we go through. And again, the funding happens when the work is done. I can't stress that enough as we go through it. Oh, yes, ma'am.
Who's the review committee? Is that the economic development?
The review committee as it stands now is myself, our CAO, and we bring other resources as required depending on what the project is. So for example, with some of the ramp work, we'd have folks from the building department in because they understand the contractors and the work better than anyone else. But as it stands now, the committee is myself and the CAO, up to $7,500. Anything above $7,500, the committee then becomes council. So the next steps, as I said, we get comments from the open house today, and again, not one and done. The goal is to leave this out for another week or two. As mentioned, our good friends at Hockeyville have us busy for the next couple of weeks. So if anyone, through the folks at the media, through your messaging out there, or folks here, anyone watching the video, we're aiming for 2 to 3 weeks before we can circle back. So on the outside, I'd say 3 weeks for public comment from anyone. Get the comments, take them back. We'll go back to our colleagues as we've gone through. We'll look at them. Again, not expecting everyone in the public that makes a comment to be fully well-versed in the legalities of what we can do or anything else. So we'll sit down as a group and say, these are great suggestions. Are they legit? Can we do them? Are they feasible? Are they something that, again, leaning on our colleagues, they'll know. We had one that I threw as an idea out, and they said, if you do that, it's so simple, you will cripple your CIP. Everyone will take that and you'll blow through your $50,000 in no time, and then you don't have the opportunity to entice more substantial updates to property that ultimately, I'm not going to lie, the point of the CIP is to generate more taxation revenue in the municipality. That's why we do it. It's to help businesses as well, but the way we rationalize it to council and why we invest money in it is because if we give, again, Mr. Smith or Mrs. Smith $10,000, $20,000 to update their facility, that money will come back to us in taxation over a amount of time or a period of time. So we'll go through that. Once we do that, we'll present that to the standing committee. The standing committee will give us their feedback, which is an open meeting, so anyone that wants to attend can always come to a standing committee as well and hear the discussion, make a public presentation before. Once they've given us their quote-unquote blessing or their approval, we circulate it to MMAH, which is the Municipal Ministry of Holy cow, it's late in the day and it's been a long day. The Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing for their review to approve and circulate through them. We finalize the plan, and then we have part of it, it's a statutory public meeting and council decision. So again, everything is on paper, black and white. There is no in between of what the CIP is and what we can offer. So that's it. And in 42 minutes, not too bad. So it's a great project. It's a great tool to have to incentivize businesses and to either grow in the municipality or to come to the municipality and invest. One question I did get asked is, the draft we've got here, we're going to put the slides up. We specifically didn't put the draft out because there's a lot of items in there, and the risk was that someone was going to look at the draft and have a copy of that and perhaps base something on it. So we wanted to be very clear and forthright. The slides are nice and easy. They're colorful. They're big. The explanation is there. When we get into the minutia of all the fine print and everything that's in there, that's when we get close to the standing committee, and that'll be a public document then that'll be circulated as part of an agenda. But again, it was all for clarity. We didn't want someone looking at that and going, great, I'm going to start buying property because I'm going to get $2,000 a unit per unit, and it doesn't get passed. So this is still a very open back and forth. Are you guys interested in any of the crazy ones that I had when I was talking about this? So one I actually stole from the US, and it became very difficult when we were going through. So the craziest one that I had was a senior relative proximity grant is what it was called. So the idea was that if I was moving to Elliot Lake because my mom, dad, father-in-law, mother-in-law lived in Elliot Lake, and I moved within X number of kilometers, that I would get an incentive to do that, because the theory is you're putting in a built-in support system. The downside with that is, and I thought it was a great idea, but then when someone explains it to you and you're like, okay, that makes sense. One of the issues with that is the definition of families changed so much. So, and relationships. So what's to say that I don't like my mom? I mean, everyone likes their mom, but say my mom and I didn't get along, and my cousin, who is very close to my family, decided to move up. Where do we draw that line? And then it became very vague. Like, how do you define family? So I was so proud of myself when I came up with the idea. I thought this is a great one, especially for Elliot Lake with our senior population and the strain off the healthcare system. And then they said that, and it was a little bit of a sad trombone. It's like, oh, okay, fine. That was one of them. There's been some crazy ones that the US has done, tied to the redevelopment of buildings in downtown areas for conversion into residential. Again, it became very difficult to, how do you pick what building and how, and what and the definitions again of what constituted the conversion of a retail building or an existing commercial structure to a residential. They did this a lot in Sault Ste. Marie. Sault Ste. Marie did it mainly because, in talking to someone at a conference, they had a lot of buildings that had a very historical look for Sault Ste. Marie, and they needed housing, but they didn't want to change the look of how the buildings looked in some areas of downtown. I'd heard through the grapevine the challenge was that now you're creating residential spaces to fit the look and shape of an existing building, which from the outside preserved the look of the building. Inside didn't quite make for the best and logical layout, especially for folks with mobility issues and that. So that was another one. But there's infinite ones that you can roll through. What we really tried to dial down to, what was going to attract an investor to Elliot Lake, what was going to make someone want to invest in Elliot Lake, what was going to make an existing business owner want to spend some money to beautify their business or grow their business in Elliot Lake. And that's kind of where we settled with those. And we also didn't want a CIP that was 25 items long, because there's only so much money in the CIP, number one. And then it just becomes an issue of how much money do you put in to entice, and then if there's too much, then you end up cutting out projects. So you end up turning people down when you shouldn't. Again, the one feedback we did get, and I'd love to hear your input and feedback on it as well, for debate as well, was the idea of changing it from 3 units down to 1 unit. So that was the other question for residential changeover. So if anyone's got any input on that, if not, think about it, drop me an email, or give me a call anytime. Happy to chat and discuss. So that is the last slide. I didn't have a final, the end slide, but this one looks good. This is an idea of one of the drawings that they had that J.L. Richard did work with. As you can see, they took an existing building and just by some of the items in, putting an awning up front, changing some of the lightings, accessibility, you take a fairly bland-ish older downtown building, and through improvements created something more attractive that changed the streetscape. So happy to answer questions that you have.
It's too bad more business people didn't come to this meeting.
Yes and no. I mean, some of them that have been through that, and again, most of it has been residential add-on to this. A lot of the business one is carryover. It's there as we go through. We're going to do a bit of a marketing advertising push to try and get some folks to take advantage of it. But yes, but it would have been nice if we had 56 people in here today, but hopefully they're watching the video and they can always reach out, and we're happy to chat with them and see if there's anything we can do or anything they think can be added on. So, yes, sir.
Is there a BIA, or has there ever been a business improvement area association?
Not, the question is there a BIA or has there ever been one? Sorry, Steve, I'm drying out quick. I'm going to stop. Voice is going to run out in a second. As far as I know, and Mrs. Finner might be able to answer, I don't think there's been a BIA in Elliot Lake. There's been a Chamber of Commerce in Elliot Lake. Yeah, but a BIA is tied in, as you probably know, to a municipality. A municipality has a tie into a BIA. Chamber becomes a separate entity on its own. We had a chamber before the pandemic. We had a chamber. It ceased to exist to a certain extent. We got involved to try and revitalize something. The chamber hasn't quite materialized in the way they'd hoped, but I'm very thrilled and pleased to say that 3 Sundays ago, maybe 4 Sundays ago, we've started a new business networking group. We've taken all the, I didn't want to compete with the chamber, so we let it run its course and nothing was happening with it, and it just wasn't melding for whatever reason. So we reached out to some business owners. My soft target was 2024. From 2022-ish, the chamber started up a little bit again, and I said, well, if nothing happens by 2024, then we'll step in and try and do something. So I'm very pleased to say that in 2024, we've got a collection. The first one we shared on our social media. There was 6 business owners that showed up to the first one. We started a business owners Facebook group. So we're doing a very grassroots, non-formal, organized group, because that's something that the ECDev department heard is with a chamber, and they work in many places, but there's a hierarchy. There's bylaws, there's a president, a vice president, a treasurer, a secretary, there's a whole bit. This was a collection and a gathering of Elliot Lake business people. And we get in, and if the project lights the fire for 5 of those business people, they can get together and they can do it. If it's something that's town-wide, they can do that. If it's something that's a partnership between 2 businesses that want to work together on something, that's the intent of it, was to take the formality out of it, and we get to serve as a quarterback as a municipality. In the chamber, we're just simply in the room as a resource. Now we get to help the group together and be the Chuck Woolery and make introductions and get people working together, which is all that we really wanted. It's just to be able to facilitate, not us always being the catalyst for getting things done, but getting people together in a room and finding those synergies between businesses that want to work together and find initiatives and will grow.
I guess what I'm thinking is that with a pot of $50,000 annually, if that could be invested in improvements that is in a specific area, it wouldn't be very long, and it could make quite a difference in the appearance of that area. I'm thinking, like 5 years or even 10 years out. That becomes 10 years out, it becomes $500,000 that was invested. And when you think of signage and awnings, and of course I know this does a lot more than that.
Yeah.
But there's the potential to really change the appearance of an area. What I saw as the tricky part for the city is if it isn't brought to you as, say, a BIA, which doors do you go knocking on to say, hey, we've got money, can we help you? Without some of the people in maybe another part of town where it really wouldn't be very effective getting perturbed that the city approached those folks in the highly visible area and not us in the non-visible area.
Yeah. So the question was about having the BIA and focusing on specific areas. I think that's one of the beauties of how this has morphed out. So back in 2000, 2006 or 2008, when one of the other ones was done, the CIP area was very restrictive. It was one small area, which really only allotted to one part of town being able to reap the rewards for a CIP or any type of improvement. What I've heard from other projects that we've done that certainly tie into this as well is all the business owners that have something at the Paris Plaza or the Hillside Plaza or in the new sub or anything else, they're all taxpayers as well that pay into that fund, that go into the CIP, that fund that. So why do I, as business owner X, who happens to be in the Paris Plaza, don't get the opportunity or the funds to beautify my business as someone in the downtown core would? And the downtown core is very important. Downtowns in every municipality are important. We're hoping that that ties into this and some of them take advantage of that. But Elliot Lake is such a compact community that, yes, we love the downtown to look lovely, but you know what? Hillside and Paris and the new sub and you know what? Any step that we can take to go through to beautify all of those sections. Because I did a tour with folks from Hydro that were here doing the open house yesterday. And as I was doing my tour through town, doing the loop, it took us 35 minutes and we covered all the high points of town, but we drove them through all the communities. So being able to beautify the whole community. And again, it's skin in the game in all of these for the business owners. So to say we're going to focus on downtown, we still can't force business owner X to say, open your wallet, you have to do this. But if someone at one of the other plazas, another area in town says, I've got it, I want to make my place, I want to upgrade our plaza, I want to upgrade our store, I want to upgrade the look of what we've got, it'd be disheartening to say, yeah, but you're not on Ontario, so you know we don't care. So I think it's a very valid point, but I think as the community morphs and as more people take advantage of this, I don't want to call it peer pressure, but rising tides in all ships as they start to see others do it, I think that would entice other businesses to do it as well. And that's the hope.
Hopefully your group of 6 grows then, and they get excited about it, because over time this could do something significant.
Yeah, it already has. They've shared, and we've got the Facebook group that's a private group, so it's not open to the public. It's only for business owners, so it lets them communicate without the fear of it being out all over in social media. And it's already growing, so it's great to see. It's very heartening. Yes, ma'am.
And there has been pockets of money and grants that have been got and applied. The downtown revitalization project, that's where you get the brick flower boxes that are downtown, the beautification of the corridor. That's where we got the brick sidewalk past Boma Chrysler there,
Yep.
up past the beer store. That's where they beautified that area, and then the entrance into the city, which they have always decided was at the lights past McDonald's, where they did beautification up that way into the downtown core. So there was a project that the Chamber was supposed to have built a small gazebo in front of CIBC years ago, but it never came to fruition.
Yep.
The Chamber disbanded at that time, and it got pushed to the wayside, but that was they were driving that project. So there has been pockets of money that have been put in different areas of the community over the years to try following the trends and following what's going on in other communities.
Yeah.
Over the years.
There's
as each pocket of money dried up, then
yeah.
a new project was brought forward, but the CIP's been the longest
Yeah.
project that's been withstanding. But I'm very happy to see that it's expanded.
Yep.
Because when I got involved with the city, it was very secular to the downtown core, expanded a little bit to the corridor and the beautification of the corridor. And so I'm glad that everybody in Elliot Lake pretty much can access
Yep.
the funds. And I think it's very equitable the way that you're doing it and fair. The only thing you don't talk about really is the real estate value of the neighbors of the improved buildings, because I think that's huge for a community, that when someone puts money into and keeps their buildings looking nice and presentable, I think that there's other ways which the community benefits.
Yeah, and
besides taxation.
Yeah, absolutely. So it makes and that's, I touched on it a little bit, it makes the community look better, and that's why the facade one's a little bit selfish in the sense that we have it out there because we want you to make your place look nice. I also think that depends on how you want to look at this, but the peer pressure factors there. If you're a business that doesn't care, or you're operating on a shoestring, which some businesses do, but if your neighbor plants a lot of flowers outside and you're not a gardener or you don't, the peer pressure's there. I mean, I hate gardening, but my wife always puts flowers outside because our neighbors all put flowers outside. So I think that, I don't want to say it forces someone to do it, but I think it creates a domino effect. And as folks see that happening, I think we'll see that happening more. There is a program right now, it's called My Main Street. It was out before, it didn't get a lot of traction. Now the My Main Street is focused on Southern Ontario. I did reach out to them and ask when Northern Ontario is going to be part of it. I haven't heard yet, but they do it every couple of years, and My Main Street ties to some beautification stuff. It ties into staffing and rehabilitation of some businesses and some investment into businesses with staffing. But they haven't done it yet, and a lot of it is the value of upgrading a main street. If you take the Orangevilles and the Hornbys and the whatever, that, you know, they're downtown. If Highway 11 goes through your downtown, there's a value to saying, well, we're going to make it look quaint. I mean, Lakeshore and Oakville, that's where I grew up, is a great example. Lakeshore and Oakville, they spend tons of money on that in the My Main Street project because everyone drives down Lakeshore and it's hoity-toity and all the places look like it looks like a Hallmark movie. There's a lot tied to those communities and the expense for doing that. When you look at traffic counts and a lot of that, when we talk about traffic counts for Ontario, and they're rationalizing, well, do we put X number of dollars to upgrade and beautify Ontario Avenue? It becomes a question of one of them had traffic counts tied to it. Well, how many vehicles drive by that the beautification would result in X? And that's a very hard thing to quantify in Elliot Lake. Would people shop more in Ontario, or would we get more traffic on Ontario Avenue if the buildings were all upgraded and painted and whatnot? That's a very difficult thing to quantify other than from a tourism point of view, which right now, again, it's back to being able to quantify those numbers to say, yes, if we turn this into one of those Hallmark downtowns that we see with the fake snow and the fake bushes and everything else, would that make a difference? It'd be difficult to again quantify that and make the case for a direct impact from the look. But this helps the ones that are crumbling, that are older. We talk about the Downtown Arts Center, we didn't talk about it, but raising the profile. The Downtown Arts Center, if you've driven by lately, it's getting close to the point that it's going to be gorgeous, and it's all glass, and it's got that. I think that's going to draw more traffic to the downtown, which will draw the other businesses to make that investment as well in their businesses and the looks, whether it's from accessibility, whether it's facade, whether it's windows, whether it's a new sign. Businesses that have been around for a long time that maybe, hey, there's a lot of artists roaming around down here, maybe we put up a sign to really say what we do here and what we are. Even if we get an uptake on that, that would be good. We're good? All right, that was pretty easy. My town hall ones usually take 2 hours. So again, you all have my email address. I'm easy to find. Call, reach out. Any questions, any suggestions, anything that you think we can add, happy to add that in, take that to committee as we go through. Stay tuned. We'll certainly publicize when this is going to go to standing committee to get the input of the committee members, which are all members of council as well. And and I hope this makes you curious enough to go and look at CIPs in other communities that are out there, because there's some that are very tied to very specific types of towns. So some of the waterfront towns, there's some neat CIPs tied to waterfront changes and waterfront attractions and functions and things like that. So when we were doing our research, we came across some really interesting ones. So thank you all very much for coming. I appreciate it. Hopefully I didn't bore you all too much with ECDEV CIP talk, but I'm happy to have it here and always happy to talk about it. So thank you.